Hi guys, I'm Shmee, and today you join me at Lamborghini Edinburgh to take a look at this car sat behind me, the Aventador S. Now, I've actually driven an Aventador S before, but it was on ice with Lamborghini in Italy, and I have not driven it on tarmac. So today, Lamborghini Edinburgh have allowed me to come down and drive their demonstrator, which is this rather lovely balloon white car behind me here. But let's take a look around it before we go out for the drive. So what's new about the S? Well, a number of things featuring the number 4. It's still four-wheel drive. It now has four-wheel steer, including the rear axle. And it also has 4 driving modes, including the new Ego mode. So the car itself is based around the 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12 that sits back here, the beast itself. It's the LP740, so 740 horsepower, up from 700 horsepower in the regular Aventador, but still with 690 Newton meters of torque. So top speed, well over 200 miles an hour. It almost doesn't matter. 0 to 62 miles per hour, 2.9 seconds. It is a beast. Cosmetically, there are a number of changes. So starting around the front, you've got a new look to the whole sort of front spoiler and apron area for allowing air through the car, giving it more downforce as well. It's just a little bit more aggressive with this kind of overhang and stance to it. Coming down the car, one difference is the vents. They used to sort of open up and rise, but now they're sort of permanently open, sticking out here to bring air in and cool that massive engine that's sitting back there. Around the rear, you have the same wing here that can be raised, but a couple of sort of cosmetic changes. One is this black, matte black sort of section across the middle behind the number plate that distinguishes it from the regular Aventador. And then if we come down here, you have a new exhaust system that is 20 kilograms lighter, sounds absolutely mental. And as you can see, you've got the sort of triple pipes going on inside this hexagonal shape, which is a new sort of styling side of things. So it is the Aventador. It is an icon, and it's now the 5th Lamborghini model to have an S version, reimagined, brought in with a new sort of breath of life. But let's jump inside too and have a little look in here. And obviously Lamborghini, well, firstly unlock, but this means Lamborghini doors, and we love them from the Aventador, the way they open up. Super, super cool. We've got some illuminated door sills here, which is always nice. And inside here, it actually has a rather new look, including a kind of distressed leather. So that's an option to have this sort of old-fashioned style leather, which is becoming almost a little trend. And with the S, you also get the diamond stitching. And if I take a seat inside the car, one of the biggest new features is the digital display. So that was introduced on the SV, but it's the first time we see it on the sort of regular model. So let's fire it into life with the start button that is under here and bring that V12 into action. It roars into life, and the display just starting to wake up. Here obviously you have your navigation controls through there, but this is where, if I cycle through the different driving modes, you're going to have all sorts of different screens to see. So we're in Strada, regular road mode. You've also got Sport, Corsa, and the 4th new mode, Ego, which you can configure through the car settings. So you press car here, and then you've got, well, it's gone straight into the different settings you can change, so powertrain, steering, and the suspension setup. We'll take it back to the navigation, maybe even directly to view the map. Usual kind of features there. But if I put it now into Corsa, you get that view from the SV, so the sort of horizontal style rev counter up towards the top, and just like feathering the throttle right now. The noises this car makes, it just sounds savagely thunderous and aggressive. We've also got the styling pack with the Lamborghini badge on the dashboard. This leather is really quite intriguing me. It's unusual in this kind of car. It's a beautiful configuration of the model in general, and just look back there, the carbon fiber support strut over the top of that naturally aspirated V12. That's what you like. Got a button to put up the wing, but I think we've had a little bit of a look around. Let's go pop some fuel in it and see what this car is like on the road and how the Aventador has grown into the Aventador S. So this is the Aventador S, and it is a bit of a beast. It has so much road presence, you would not believe but it is, however, spectacularly wide. It's about 2 meters 26 from the edge of the mirror to the edge of the mirror on the other side, which down a countryside road makes it feel really quite large. And the other thing, just to get drawbacks out the way, is the gearbox. It's the ISR gearbox, which is updated from the first gen Aventador to the Aventador S, the 7-speed sequential manual automated sequential gearbox, which is not, let's say, the best. You have to fluctuate the throttle pedal to make sure you get the shifts cleanly, and if you leave it in automatic mode, you don't really know when they're coming, so you end up doing a lot of that lurching forwards and backwards. However, if you turn it up or go to sport mode and you press the manual button so that you're using the paddles, which are rather lovely paddles, and you start to get some of that noise going, and you put your foot down, everything becomes irrelevant because it takes off. It is like a fighter jet getting ready to fly on a mission. It is huge, but it is immensely powerful. 740 horsepower. That is a massive, massive, massive number. And just listen to the crackles as we come in towards a stop. I mean, you just sit in it and you feel like you're inside something from another planet. It is completely bonkers and just crazy as a car. Like, how does this make any sense? Then you get moving, and somehow it's surprisingly nimble for such a heavy car as well. With that engine, it's 1,575 kilos, which is no sort of featherweight by any sense of the word. It just manages to move, and it's helped to do so by the 4-wheel steering system, which works really quite well. But the steering itself is a little bit peculiar. It can turn on a sixpence when you're sort of at a standstill in a car park. You can maneuver in the most ridiculously tight circle. But when you're driving hard, it's really heavy and almost a challenge, and you feel the kind of weight of it in a perhaps slightly artificial kind of way. It's a strange sensation to get used to. But then when you're on an open road and you do this and you listen to that kind of noise, and then you do this up towards the red line, what is this thing? It's just savagely quick. It's hard to sort of believe that this sort of size and weight can be propelled to a top speed. It's around 217 miles per hour, I think, at the very top end, and that's in sport mode. If we turn it one more, we've got Corsa mode with the crazy horizontal display. Shifts get even more violent, the steering changes, and then you've got some nice blue shift lights. Whoa, okay, that was a kick. It's a proper machine. And one interesting thing is how it alters the 4-wheel drive system depending what mode you're in. So when you're in Strada mode, you've got 40% at the front and 60% at the rear, which is sort of safest mode. Obviously, it's going to pull you out of corners, best for bad weather, best for launch control as well, as it happens. If you go into sport mode, that's the most playful. So it's only 10% at the front and 90% at the rear. Then if you go into Corsa mode, Corsa for race, you've got 20 at the front, 80 at the rear, and it changes things slightly, so you get more exhaust crackles in sport than in Corsa, but Corsa is the most violent, aggressive, you know, it's race mode, what I'm in right now, and it's not as violent in terms of ride as I feared it might have been. It's not that bumpy, he says, as I'm sort of well aware of the width of the car, but even just cruising along, you give a gentle press, and then you get the burbles. Yeah, can do that all the time. And the way you're sat, you feel actually like you're sat quite high relative to the car, but you're so low to the ground because it's such a ridiculously big thing. And then as you go quite slowly, it gets a little bit almost uncomfortable. But for some reason, none of this matters at all, because that is not what this car is here for. This makes a statement. This is the Lamborghiniest of Lamborghinis. This is what they sort of sell if you want something that's not a Ferrari, it's not a McLaren. It's about just being crazy and wild and being set free, and that's what it does with the looks, the design flair that comes from Lamborghini, the engineering side that comes from Audi. Obviously Audi owning Lamborghini in recent years, and they create this surprising package that doesn't necessarily make sense, but then you get to a national speed limit, you drop it down to first gear, and you put your foot down, and all hell breaks loose as you just accelerate away. And like I said, somehow it actually manages to turn the weight of this thing in a surprisingly sensible sort of way, in a normal way. I don't know what to say. The Aventador is the Aventador, you know, it's an icon. It's a car that is what it is, and it's been immensely popular. I don't think Lamborghini ever expected to sell so many of them when they released the sort of first generation of Aventador about 5 or 6 years ago now. And the S is kind of the midlife refresh to that. So yeah, there are things about it that I really don't like. The size and weight, the steering feel, the sort of slow gearbox. But then You've got the sheer in-your-faceness of it. That's not obviously a word, but you kind of get what I mean. And what it represents is going to be bought by, it's bought by that kind of person who just wants this car, who fell in love with the design and styling, and what this represents, the wing going up behind you, and the slightly difficult and awkward view through the horizontal slats at the back, the door mirrors that are quite narrow and don't really show you everything you might like to see out of them, the rough and sort of clunky ride, the fact that there's nowhere to store anything. I feel like I'm listing off things that are negative when it's not necessarily negative. It's just fun and bizarre and just an entertaining thing to be driving. If, however, we pop it into Ego mode, this is where you can configure things. So you can choose your best suspension setup, your best steering setup, your best powertrain setup, and configure the car how you want, which is obviously developed from Audi's Drive Select, that kind of functionality. Or we can go into, I'm going to put it into Sport, which I feel is kind of the right mode for me to drive it in. You get a lot of the noise and drama without all of the violence of Corsa mode. Although, like I say, you're not going to want to drive this car in automatic. That is not what it's for. Just that noise is just crazy, and it's always there. It's kind of an all-encompassing V12. It's a strange noise that when it came out we were all like, oh, what's the noise this Aventador thing makes? But now it just seems to define, this generation of massive naturally aspirated engines. When it does that, and when you do that, you absolutely take off. It's so aggressive, and it's so linked to how much you press the throttle as well. If you give it to the floor, it's a completely different feel than if you sort of just press down on it gently, more than I find in other cars. So it sort of controls you slightly. You have to really mean you're going for it if you are going for it. He says, come down just in first gear, blinky neck. It picks up so ferociously. It's just a savage weapon when it gets moving. Let's try and drive it gently. Let's go into Strada road mode and try and drive this car in a super peaceful kind of way. Relax a little bit, if that is actually even possible in a Lamborghini Aventador. And it's not too bad when you get around the gearbox. It poodles along. It's reasonably compliant in terms of ride. It's not sort of bouncing me around everywhere in a massively uncomfortable way. The noise is not too crazy. Downshifting there, we're not getting like this huge noise and drone that just won't go away. So that's perhaps the surprising bit. You do have to, like I say, fluctuate the throttle. So in a double clutch car, you just keep your accelerator foot wherever it is. But in here, when you want to shift gears, you have to give it a little sort of relax, like you do in a manual. So it takes a little bit of, I guess, learning and getting used to and making sure you get that right. The only difficult thing is working out where on earth that left side is, because it feels like it's a sort of whole lane over that way, and it's not that far away. It's just really hard to position. But I can cruise through a town reasonably peacefully if you want to. No dramas, no major sort of biggies, and then you've got sort of all sorts of stuff in here, like you've got the reversing camera, you've got the Sensonum, however you pronounce it, sound system that is presumably pretty incredible. Nice sort of finish and fit, and they've been building a fair few of these, so they know what they're doing now. Yes, that noise again, can't resist it. Let it build up. Revs up to about 8,500 RPM. Sheer ferocity. Even when you're not booting it, it still just feels like a crazy thing. And I think perhaps actually the sense of speed won't necessarily come across on video in the way it does. I mean, maybe the shifts when I'm sort of lurching around, but yeah. I think one thing that's really cool that I haven't actually demonstrated is the turning circle. I alluded to it earlier, but literally you pull into just the tiniest of spaces and it can just go round. With obviously the rear wheels turning at slow speed in the opposite direction to the front to give you more turning ability, and at high speed in the same direction to give you more actual stability, so that you're not gonna find yourself wandering if you're going over 200 miles an hour. And I haven't obviously driven it fast because I'm on the road, not on a runway, but at high speed it is presumably really quite planted down, which that system massively helps with. So you've got all these sort of fours that I mentioned, the four-wheel drive, the four driving modes, the four-wheel steering. The other is the four-active suspension, the new suspension system that's been revised specifically for this car, for the S. But I mean, it's just a mental thing. Like I said, doesn't necessarily make sense, but maybe it doesn't need to. Anyway, I'm going to head back to the dealership and show you a little bit more around it. Actually, no, first, let's just pull over somewhere and listen to it. Yeah, that makes me giggle like a child. It's just ridiculous. The noise is phenomenal from this V12, but this is the stock factory exhaust. Obviously, so many owners then go and put something even louder onto their Aventadors. But now, let's actually head back to the dealer and I'll show you more of the internals and the electronics and that side of things. It is absurd how much attention the Aventador gets. Just driving it back now, every single head that hears or detects that you might be coming turns to stare at this car, and I guess you can see why when you see the outside of it. But let's just have a quick sort of whiz around the interior of this and a couple more things to sort of talk about and show you through. And one thing, just the tiny little storage bucket, you can't even fit a mobile phone in there. That's all you've got. So if you want to put your phone somewhere, good luck. Put it here, it'll fly away. Put it like on the floor, danger to the pedals. Basically, there's nowhere to store anything. That didn't change from the Aventador to the Aventador S, although lots of people install an aftermarket kind of pouch on the side of there. And the glove box is not that much use either. You can see, pretty small. So, what else can we talk about? Let's talk about the good things. I mean, everything is pretty self-explanatory. It all works as you'd expect it to. The entertainment system is all very familiar from the group type products. If you go into car, that's where we had the ego settings earlier, but you can do all of your other sort of settings and controls. Although, confusingly, scrolling up is that way, scrolling down is that way, which makes no sense. That's totally backwards. Nav, like you've seen, that all works decently as you'd expect. Media, that kind of thing, is all good as well. And down here, manual, let's go manual on the paddles. Reverse, kind of unusual buttons and a little bit awkward to press because you have to get your arm back behind the seat to actually sort of register on them. But anywho, that side of things is all decent. You can go through different displays on the screen and different things using this. So you can see at the left side there, that scrolls through radio stations, mode, can connect to telephone, radio, and details. Not too much information there then. Other side, volume, that side of things. But the display in general, you've got this large screen in the center, obviously with currently in Corsa mode, but if I go back to sport, you can see that image, and then if we go to Strada, you've got it like that, and then you've got the two little digital displays at the side, which are both kind of almost satin in appearance. So you have the glossy central screen, so they look kind of static, rather than perhaps the, I guess, digital LCDs that they actually are. But then just a little flirt with the accelerator. I love that noise as you come back down off the revs. To shut the car off. So if you go into Ego, it actually tells you on the screen how it's all set up. And another interesting thing is you see that sort of graphic behind. That shows you where the wheels are currently turning. So you can see that the front wheels and the steering sort of graphic all turn with the wheel. If I zoom in a little bit on that, you can see that that literally turns live, which is quite neat. And you'd see the rear wheels turning as well at speed or depending what you're doing. So that's quite a nice little display to have there. Other than that though, there's not that much to it. I'm going to put it into gear because you should turn off the car in gear and shut it down. And that is the end of my Aventador S experience. And to open the door, you press in here, lift that, and up goes the door. So let me hop on out and just have a last, I guess, little wander around the car. Outside here in Edinburgh. Big thanks to Lamborghini Edinburgh, by the way, for letting me take this car out today and drive it. And if you're wondering why there is a Porsche there, new GT3, it has been detailed inside the Lamborghini showroom by a customer who is a big customer of Lamborghini, or for a customer who's a big customer of Lamborghini here. We're actually at a Greypool where we've got Lamborghini, Bentley, Maserati, Ferrari, and Porsche, all the different cars and options around here. So looking around then, DOD wheels, I do love that design. Really, really cool wheel design. I think the way they come out. Come in and have a look at those gigantic wheels. Back here, 21 inches at the rear, but it's a cool design. Carbon ceramic brakes, Lamborghini Carbo Ceramici. The Aventador S logo, where before you had the LP700-4 logo designation. The distinctive headlights with that kind of Y shape running light inside them, and then just generally the way this is all redesigned, as I showed you earlier, for maximum airflow through the car, with these kind of teeth almost, aren't they? The way that bit is styled on each side, sticking down at the front. If we come down here and have a sort of look low in at the front, but still very distinctly Aventador. Anyway, it is literally a beast. There is no better way to describe this than an insane beast of a car, and a lot of fun to drive, even if it doesn't necessarily make an awful lot of sense. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this video up there, so thank you very much for watching, guys. That is it for this time. I'll catch up with you again very soon. Cheers.